Whether trying to trick wary audiences into the theatre, covering up directors' more extreme deviations, hiding plot spoilers, or merely misunderstanding the films that they represent. There are a whole host of horror movies that have been made to seem a whole lot lighter on the surface than they really are. So following up 10 horror movies way darker than advertised, I'm Gareth, this is What Culture Horror, and here are 10 more horror movies way darker than advertised. Number 10, Fresh 2022. Positioned as a quirky abduction horror, Mimi Cave's feature film debut, Fresh, turns out to be anything but. You know the story. Girl meets mysterious and handsome boy. They date, they fall head over heels, and then boy drugs, kidnaps, and keeps her as his latest plaything? Right. I mean, it's not pretty, but it's not uncommon in the realm of horror, and we assume that we've seen it all before, until we haven't. Fresh has an added twist to the time-honored story that was not well signposted in the marketing material. Steve doesn't want to assault, torture, or otherwise use Noah. He wants to cut her up and sell her. Now, the cannibal killer is bad enough, but the consumer cannibal killer is another beast altogether. Once safely chained up in Steve's high-tech basement, Steve takes her ass, yep, exactly as it sounds, and Noah discovers that she's not alone. And things only get grimmer from there. The film slowly bleeds ever darker details as it progresses, starting with the fact that Steve keeps his victims alive as long as possible while he dismantles them. By the time we get to Steve's demise, the grisly violence is the least of our concerns. Number 9, Resident Evil Apocalypse 2004. Resident Evil Apocalypse arrived hot on the heels just 2 years after Paul W.S. Anderson's first foray into the video game world, with a new director, Alexander Witt this time, and at least a couple of the same old faces, but not in quite the same guise. We'll get there. And of all the sequels, this one packs the biggest gut punch and winds up being super dark. Throughout the film, apocalypse survivor Alice is stalked by the unrelenting Nemesis. True to the monster from the games, Nemesis has an array of weapons and a brutal combat style that inspire genuine fear every time he shows up on screen. And yet the movie's most shocking moment has nothing to do with his present actions or what he's capable of, but where he came from. Turns out Nemesis is Alice's friend Matt from the first film, and we are treated to a flashback that shows his infection, mutation, and modifications at the Umbrella Corporation, who sculpted him out of his humanity and into a Cenobite on steroids. Yeesh. Not a single one of us is prepared for such a tragic and diabolical twist, at least not one delivered so severely. Number 8, Infinity Pool 2023. The average horror fan knows what to expect when watching anything from Messrs. Cronenberg. But while David's work has always been challenging, with extreme body horror and weighty themes, Brandon's has begun to meld modern horror's predilection for the socially extreme into his process, pushing his films into ever darker places. Now, on the face of it, Infinity Pool looks like a taut, mind-bending ride that takes a normal couple, author James Foster and his girlfriend, and throws them into catastrophe as James accidentally runs down a man on a foreign island and is sentenced to death. Luckily, the island also has a cloning machine, and James meets a group of socialites with enough cash to burn so he can literally get away with murder. And yet, while the sci-fi element is present throughout and throws up salient questions about consciousness and personhood, the mechanics of this process are not what Cronenberg Jr. is interested in. No. While his father would have taken delight in showing us the fleshy machinery of the thing, Brandon instead uses this as an opportunity to dismantle the person and psyche of James, subjecting him to increasing horrors as he watches his death over and over again, losing his humanity and becoming one with the group. In all, Infinity Pool is dark and twisted in ways that simply can't be conveyed by a 2-minute trailer, using its body horror merely as a veneer around its true, inner darkness. Number 7, Scream 2, 1997. Wes Craven's Scream 2 doubled down on the premise of its predecessor, continuing to take apart the kinds of films that Craven had been making for the past couple of decades with a meta-awareness of horror convention. Sidney Prescott and her pals have made it to college, but she can't leave the specter of her high school killer behind. And soon, Ghostface rears his ugly mug once more, despite original killers Billy and Stu being 6 feet under. Darker, scarier, and more serious than its predecessor, Scream 2 knows that it's a sequel and understands that the rules are different this time around. The killers themselves are also darker, more joyless, and packing a serious motive: revenge. So yeah, all in all, it's not quite the prank calls and popcorn romp we were looking for, is it? Number 6, The Menu 2022. Mark Mylod's The Menu is a social satire tackling both the pretensions of the fine dining world and the rigor and intensity of the best chefs, who, despite producing tiny, absurd meals that most of us would miss the point of, are wound so very tightly and disciplined to militaristic standard. This is exemplified by Chef Julian, who invites a smattering of critics, celebrities, and foodies to his private island to taste an exclusive course of dishes. The Mess, the film's 4th course, in which sous chef Jeremy shoots himself in the head, signals the tone change and dark turn, from which the film never really pulls back. And yet it's never clear from the marketing surrounding the film just how far the chef and his team go, or indeed if there's even anything to seriously worry about at all. This is because the suggestion both in the film's trailer and the first 2/3 of the film itself is that much of the strange happenings may be merely a new level of pretension and part of the menu's storytelling process. But oh, how they are not. Number 5, Aliens vs. Predator Requiem 2007. The Strauss brothers, do not make me say it the other way around please, are not known for their filmmaking prowess, with few flicks in their repertoire and none of note. Though the reason for this may well be Aliens vs. Predator Requiem. Yeah, let's talk about it. Trusted by Fox to helm the $40 million sequel, the directing duo produced something that felt like neither of the two series in tone or content, and which resulted in the possibly permanent banishment of the AVP property from big screens. Despite not being another adventure romp like the first film, Fox managed to harvest a passable trailer or two from the raw materials available, and get fans moderately hyped for what could at least have been an okay, more violent time. I mean, I was somewhat excited back in the day. However, as both a literal and figuratively dark movie, AVP Requiem destroyed expectations with bad lighting and a jarring tone. The maternity hospital sequence in particular is unexpectedly dark, where the beastly new predalien descends on a group of pregnant women and forcibly inseminates them with its own eggs. Lovely. Needless to say, the alien offspring aren't good at sharing spaces and kill the unborn babies before bursting out of the pregnant women's stomachs. Yeah, I was way too young to watch this film, but I did. Yay! Number 4, Rosemary's Baby, 1968. Adapted almost verbatim from Ira Levin's novel, Roman Polanski's Rosemary's Baby puts his once frequent collaborator Mia Farrow front and center as Rosemary Woodhouse, a young woman who has moved into a new Manhattan apartment and begins experiencing strange things around her neighbors, the Castevets. The film has a kind of warm nostalgia to it, and differs greatly from modern horror movies by being set within an ordinary apartment block, populated by ordinary, middle-class people, with no action sequences, no chases, no rapid editing or jump scares every 5 minutes. Instead, Polanski builds up Rosemary's descent into what appears like hysteria with a mounting dread. Rosemary is kept in a state of fear and minor sedation, gaslighted, abused, and in one scene, literally drugged and abused by the devil. When Rosemary comes to term, believing it to be her own human child, her husband, now a paid-up cult member, and the Castevets tell her it was stillborn and secrete the devil baby away. And what's worse, she ends up succumbing to the cult in the end, accepting baby Adrian for her own. Number 3, Possum, 2018. There is no two ways about it. Director Matthew Holness' Possum looks bleak, with that signature grey and dreary aesthetic that the last 70+ years have helped us associate with working-class Britain on film, and the equally miserable-looking Sean Harris in the lead role. It could never have been otherwise. And yet the film, which focuses on disgraced children's puppeteer Philip Cornell as he's forced to return to his hometown and shack up with his uncle, Maurice, is so much worse than we could have ever imagined. Philip comes unstuck, spiraling into a sleepless, puppet-fueled meltdown. And the cause of his terror and anguish and the physical manifestation of his spider-like puppet, Possum, is not, as we might have suspected, his own guilt and failings, but the repressed child abuse suffered at the hands of the very man he is now forced to live with. And Maurice didn't stop with Philip, as he and the locked chest in the corner of his room have everything to do with a local child who has gone missing, all revealed in a devastatingly dark climax. Number 2, Gremlins, 1984. Gremlins, cute, timeless, harmless fun from Joe Dante, right? Wrong! As many of us forget Gremlins is a horror film, as forget it's also a Christmas film. Because, well, Gizmo. But behind the fuzzy little guy lurks a horde of evil. Billy Peltzer gets his mogwai for Christmas, and it's all going well until he ignores the 3 essential rules. Don't get it wet, don't expose it to sunlight, and definitely don't feed it after midnight. More mogwai spawn from Gizmo's body and soon become spiny green monsters hell-bent on ruining the festive season. The sweet little monster movie turns dark around the midpoint, as Gizmo's demon offspring are unleashed on the local town, and rampant carnage, murder, and scares take over from the established shenanigans and light-hearted fun. This includes Santa being mauled to death, and around 150 of the Gremlins themselves being trapped in a flaming movie theater. And don't even mention Stripe's blind, screaming, face-melting demise and brief skeletal resurrection. Happy Christmas. Number 1, Stopmotion, 2024. Stop-motion animator Robert Morgan's genius idea of making a film about a stop-motion animator, Stopmotion, paid dividends, allowing the director to fully utilize his animation style while crafting a live-action story in which the work begins to bleed into reality. Ella Blake is the unfortunate animator at the heart of this story, left adrift in the wake of her mother's hospitalization, and permitted for the first time in her life to create a stop motion based on her own ideas and designs. Ella loses touch with the world around her, and as she experiments with living and dead flesh puppets and increasingly macabre setups for her film, the story she tells in her studio hammers its way into the real of her own psyche. Now, the supernatural would have been one thing, but the very lack of anything empirically sinister is what makes stop motion so dark, as Ella will do and kill anything to complete her project.